piloting how to help people get more connected to their food system. But yeah, my focus is on helping people, and we work a lot with kids on helping them address their climate anxieties and get to action. And so the food system is one of many systems that we help get more connected to.
Awesome. Wow. I love that. Yeah.
I would love to hear what, because it was last week was a bit in and out. And Indy, Charlie, you guys are such a great collector of people. It's just every single person I meet through this, I'm just like, wow, just dope humans.
Yeah, Indy is definitely weaving the connections. I love it.
Yeah. How did you guys all get connected, and like what are you focused on?
So I met Indy a while ago at a place called Cross Campus. I don't even know if they're still doing events there in Santa Monica. So it's kind of like we're a business meetup hub. And I was giving a presentation on behalf of the center I was working for at the time, called the Art Science Center at UCLA. And I still am connected with them, and I teach with them in the summers to high school students about the intersection between science and art. And so, yeah, we just connected after that presentation, and he came to the show that I had up at the time about finding your inner light and visualization as a way of helping to deal with cancer. And it was also about research on nanodiamonds, kind of as metaphorically, but also the actual research on nanodiamonds for delivery of chemotherapy drugs and reducing the amount of chemotherapy drugs being given to patients at the time. It still hasn't been actually accepted as a clinical treatment, but it was some researchers that I was collaborating with at the time that were doing research on that, and I found really fascinating and beautiful. So yeah, that was how we met, and since then we met up again later at a Sikh temple, as I really got into Kundalini yoga, and still am. So sort of wove back in through that connection, and then we started collaborating. Actually, I haven't even met Charlie in person yet. This is crazy. We started collaborating on Zoom like back in October 2019, before anybody was using Zoom.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, a big part of what it is, education, interdisciplinary education, from pretty much fourth grade to high school, sometimes younger, but tends to be more in that range. And really getting kids to open up their minds and keep them open as they grow, and realize that they're going to get pushed into boxes constantly by the institutional systems, and you just like, no, there are institutions within institutions that are available to you. You just have to find those, usually individuals within like a university.
It's like finding your people.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can keep that channel flowing, the creativity and investigation and spirituality, and just forget all those divisions that we're being told are real all the time, So yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah, finding your people within the parts of a system that you're part of.
Yeah,
finding your people within that. Yeah, it's something that I was talking with a fellow lacrosse coach of mine. We coach middle school lacrosse out here in San Diego, and we're very much on a similar wavelength, and we're talking about literally like, how do you find people in your town that are like your people? Like what's a container to help you find your people? And it's an open question that we're exploring as adults, and imagine, whether it's sports, whether like whatever it may be as kids, how do you, finding your people is and like you said with light, finding your people based on like what lights you up, and like and continuing to be curious about your light. And it makes for a very different type of relationship when the people that you connect with are curious about their light and curious about your light, as that evolves over time too.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually how Andy and I met. We were both in the whole tech space in Santa Monica, and I was coming out of Disney, and I was working there for a while, just learning a lot of the creative skills needed to kind of build out. I love games at the time, and that was more of a hobby, but I didn't think I'd go into like more creative tech design, and that's kind of where I went with it. So when I left, I kind of realized that I wanted to create better stories, because I think what was happening at Disney was like you buy out something and then you let the marketing kind of take over to kind of decide what goes into the content, rather than before it was always about content, and then you gave things to marketing and they took that and went with it. But what's happening, it's almost like what is considered eyeballs is considered what will trend the market. And that's kind of where I feel like, no, actually that doesn't work for us, because you need to allow like leaders to shape the next generation, not the old people coming in and telling the new people what to do, or letting the chaos decide how we learn and how we do things. So I was coming at it from, at the time, everybody's kind of like startup-y. So entrepreneurship is kind of where I met Indy, is really like that passion where you're going to like build a business of something that you love. And so I was coming out of it with getting to know the tech space, but we used this heart-centered tech award system to connect to the people in the network. And then through there, that's how I met Indy. And at the time, I was actually getting ready to transition into the VR development, just because VR was starting to become really, really awesome and very interesting to our space in the tech space. And I was hoping to bring some heart or spirituality in it, and that's kind of where one of these days we met. Indy and I met, and it was just he just acts like a very authentic person, and especially in the tech space where everybody's just like selling an app, you're just like, hey, this guy's interesting, and he talks about very interesting things than just whatever all the tech guys are talking about. So that was kind of refreshing, and that's how Indy and I kind of stayed in touch, and since then, like, we've always been, we decided to, like, every kind of conversation about how could we improve things, we just started to say, hey, let's take it seriously. Like, what will we do? Because as entrepreneurs, you have already a mindset of like, what kind of business can I build to help people, right? To serve whatever the market is looking for. And so we were problem solving, and that's kind of where the education conversation came from. For me, it was education in games. For him, he was coming from like literally education space. And so, and then Mick was literally still in the education space, while Indy was kind of like on his way, kind of like leaving the system, saying, hey, let's rebuild something. So from there, the three of us kind of made the education conversation from a hobby to like a side hustle to like, here we are today, trying to like make this something that we really care about and can focus on. And because education spans from the beginning till we die, we never stop learning. So why is it so separated, and why is it guarded by certain groups of people who can say this information is something you should pay for, and this is considered crappy and you don't need it, right? So that's where we're at today, just gathering people and trying to keep that education conversation going.
With an amazing venue to spark it all off.
Yeah, it's exciting to finally see like a dome-shaped space rather than like a square box where we're teaching kids.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Christina joined us. Hey, Christina.
Hello, Christina.
How is everybody?
Good.
Good. I can't see everyone. I'm on my phone, so I can't see. Is Indy here too?
He's in and out of dimension whenever his phone lets him.
Good. Well, it's good to see you all. It's good to meet you. I'm looking forward to hearing about the project and what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm driving in Puerto Rico.
Oh, awesome.
What? Cool.
Wow.
Christina, let's see. I feel like we've met maybe just through Zoom or something. Have you joined us for other events with the Cosmic Labyrinth, or how do you know Indy?
So I know Indy from We Deepen. He is the facilitator, a guide of the experience Mind Sports.
Mm.
And we've done multiple debates, experiences together of mass versus no mass, socialism versus capitalism, polyamorous versus monogamy. And he's facilitated those, and I've helped coordinate those experiences. And oh, there he is. I think I see his face momentarily.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we work together on that. I'm the founder of an organization called We Deepen, and we aggregate and curate all types of social and transformational experiences that help people to have more meaningful, loving relationships. And children, when I tune into why I'll say I'm pretty much obsessed with love. And that obsession comes with, childhood of growing up in environments where educational curriculums completely ignored I guess what was happening in the brain, or the human experience for a child around relationships, male, female, whatever, even like attraction, sexuality. And that wasn't discussed or talked about. And as my whole personal love journey has been around of like, what the fuck, like the divorce rate is 50%, and it was when I was a child, and it hasn't changed, and it may be even rising. And how do we incorporate these educational elements around love and relationship to help for more people to be able to stay together and closer to oneness.
That's awesome.
Christina's also 3 years in a row facilitating fundraising.
I know.
What?
3 years, what?
I think he just cut out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's in robot mode. Would you like to fill him in on what do you think he said? 3 years.
Well, he said Christina's also 3 years into. Oh, he might be okay. Potentially. So I have
What?
I think what he's. I'll speak a little bit to what I think Indy might be sharing.
Okay.
He said 3 years into it. So I have an organization called Feminine Weapon, and Feminine Weapon has been around since 2012. And for the past 9 years, I have been producing a big event on January 30th, which is Feminine Weapon Day. And it's a day to celebrate feminine energy and the power of it within inside every single one of us. And through that event, 100% of the proceeds benefit children of abuse, extreme poverty, and human trafficking. So we have positioned ourselves as parents of the universe. We've raised over $73,000 for children in orphanages, foster homes, to receive education, art, and healing programs, to feel the essence of love, because there are 150 million orphans and 80 million children living without a single parent. So that to increasing human consciousness, especially around children when they're most traumatized, around love and relationship, is very near and dear to my soul purpose.
You'll fit perfect into the water and air category for when we really have you heard of the theme of the event?
I saw a little bit on flyers, but this is my first meeting that I am attending to hear more of what's happening.
Yeah, we themed it around the 4 elements and how the 4 elements are actually very prevalent in our lives. And the 5th element is a heart space, and that's kind of where we actually connect and have relationship with people and really talk about this whole spirit, energy, and ether, and how it's in everything. So, the water element is really about relationships and connection with people, the mother energy. So it'd be a perfect place for us to maybe incorporate you there for like the relationships, emotional information, because that's obviously not talked about in any education system, where we talk about just relationships and even just, you know, understanding like how do we nurture each other emotionally so that we get through things where, like, you know, there's no tools out there. There's a lot of tools, but like you have to pay so much money to like access all these tools that allows us to really hone into our emotions and balance them out. So it would be a great place for you to be able to support that area, the water element.
Love to.
Indy, are you good?
Am
Oh,
I
we hear
good?
you. Perfect. Yes.
Am I good? I'm relative. It's all relative.
Yeah.
Nice to see you guys. Nice to see you, Mick. Nice to see you, Christina. I like the hair. It looks good. And Adam was there, but he's gone, but it's okay. It's good tune in today. We got some good things to go over. But I think first of all, thanks to all the mamas. Like, they even like, you know, thank you all the mamas. Thank you to all your mamas, because without your mamas, you guys wouldn't be here. So I'm really grateful for all of them. Can't wait to give them a hug myself personally, and a laugh and a massage, but don't tell them. Keep it a surprise. So we got some cool news. I have some like things to go off of, but let me throw it up to you guys first before I go on my agenda. But are there any things that are on your agenda? Or Christina, do you have any questions about you like being interested in being participating in this? Are there some stuff that we can illuminate or?
Well, I mean, this is my first meeting that I'm tapping into. I can already tell that the essence of the experience that will take place, I'm interested in supporting, and also even beyond that, I guess of understanding the full on vision would be helpful for me. And then maybe even the roles. Just I can see 4 of us on the screen. Is there more than 4 of us here?
Yeah, there's 5 of us right now.
There's 5.
There's also an AI that's listening to us and transcribing everything we're doing. So keep that in mind.
It is,
Okay.
is watching.
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly say something on the essence, and maybe Charlie will illuminate more. But what brought us together, you know, before the pandemic, what brought us together was putting together a show in one of the domes. At that time, it was Vortex Domes, which is at Center Studios in Manhattan. It's one of the few studios in Los Angeles that's still independent, like an independent movie studio lot. And so we were in partnership with, we were like working with the organization that builds domes, like the 360 domes that like all the Wisdom is in, all that, they build those domes, right? It's a company that builds them. You might already know Christina, like Mark from Vortex. Maybe you've met Ed Lance, some of these cats, or they're older generation folks. They so we were planning to do some sort of like Mr. Rogers kind of show, right? Like in these domes, like an educational show, kind of like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers Magic School Bus. And then the pandemic hit. And then from the pandemic hit, like we were like, whoa, what are we gonna do now? And we like rallied a bunch of other educators, and we started doing these play shops online. And those play shops were awesome. Kids came to them. So, like, I'll give you an example. Some of the play shops were called Fairy School. We had a fairy school for kids where they got to like learn how to build an altar in their space. They got to like attract fairies to their space, connect to the different elements. But all the different play shops we started doing, as we've been doing over the couple of years, it's been more and more clear that what we're doing is creating a curriculum. And the curriculum we're creating is for kids to connect not just to self-care, but also to self-mastery. But it's through the elements. Like that's the foundation, is the elements, right? The 4 directions, right? And it's kind of cool. The elements give us kind of like a map to apply play shops, apply anything we want to, right? I mean, even us, right? We're different astrologies. How does even astrology play into there? And so this event itself is basically an experiment for that curriculum, right? It's a physical experiment. We've been experimenting for 2 years now online. This is the first time we're like, all right, time to do the experiment in person. But here's the thing. We're like, wait, we could do the experiment in person and sell tickets and blah, 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 and get all these like rich kids who are like already go to this stuff with their parents. They go to like Topanga But we're like, wait, what if we do it for the kids who never would have access to this? Like, what if we give it to the foster kids first, and any other kids that would benefit from this that would never get a chance to go to Wisdom, that just wouldn't happen with their families, it wouldn't happen, it wouldn't line up. So how do we bring them to the space and then experiment with this modality of connecting to the elements, but not just connecting to the elements, but also eventually, like, this is why Adam's here too. He can bring some more knowledge and wisdom on this, but connecting these kids for the rest of the summer with activities they can volunteer with that are connected to those elements. So let's say they're a water sign and they are like, and they connect, and we have like some water nonprofits there at this event. They can now volunteer throughout the summer to go and support the water, or maybe to go clean the rivers, or maybe to plant trees to get more water, right, coming down, or whatever. But the point is, we want to create like this way to activate them as superheroes, right? And then they can actually do the superhero work in the real world, not like in the virtual, not in the metaverse. The metaverse is like, that's great, but we want them to actually be able to show up in real life in a real way, and to feel empowered to do so. And then we can continue to stay connected to them, because we're going to continue to develop curriculum. It might also be both augmented. It might be virtual and physical, the curriculum that we continue to build. So that's a nutshell. Anything to add, Charlie?
No, I mean, that's good. It's a great start. The idea is also to like build out we're putting in a lot of the spiritual context too, because I think there's a lot of places where like the new age people, like religion, and all these places have a lot of ideas beyond spirituality, but the dogma is stuck in an old reality where it's like, listen to me and I'll tell you how to do it, versus like, no, what if we actually allow children and everybody who joins to amalgamate what they believe the spirituality is? And so we're using like very basic concept like the 4 elements, which is in all, I mean, that's just a pure alchemy. And then we go into like 7 chakra, which is the physical body. And then we go into astrology, which is reading divine messages. And so we'll evolve the information, but in the beginning, we're really trying to get kids to like learn about magic. Like magic is really just the simple details in our lives that is very magical. We naturally do, but we've learned to sensationalize the things that aren't really magical, that are like, oh yeah, earth bending is about moving all these rocks and stuff. Well, like we do that in agriculture, but we've kind of forgotten that like our technology allows us to do this, and we just kind of get caught up in like, what if I can do it by just moving my hand, which is great in probably, you know, the next couple of thousands of years when we develop our psychic skills. But right now, today, it's about using tools to allows us to grow food and vegetable. That should be a superpower that no one talks about, but it's very powerful, because today with like supply problems, like, you know, if you can't get food from a grocery store, where do you go, right? Who are your heroes who can just grow food by just dropping seeds and suddenly like trees come out, you know? And then you see people doing container gardening, and it's like, can't grow anything. So, I mean, there are people who naturally have, you know, different abilities. And so those are the things that we really want to bring out in this first event, is really the empowering of who we are naturally. So astrology is a great place for us to kind of bring that out. But the 4 elements allows us to kind of make it more relatable for today, like more intuitive.
Yeah, and to add even on top of that too, it's important to share the vision of this, is that, you know, this is for us too. Like, you know, we're really creating a Disneyland, but like alternative Disneyland, the alternative Disney, right? Where it's like, hey, like, what is the alternative Disney? Like, what is it? Like, it's not even there, right? And so where can people who are adults connect to their inner child? And also all of us have stuff to share too from our wisdom, but how can we show up with our wisdom in a very intentional, mindful way for children too, and teenagers, and embody what they can become, right? If they build resilience, if they challenge themselves, if they're curious, if they challenge their own ideas, right, of what they thought before. So this event is like really also about us. I mean, Adam, maybe you can share what excites you about this, but really it's like, we're also learning how to become superheroes ourselves. And what does that mean? Through our astrology, through the elements, how do we become superheroes? Christina, you're so curious, you're always learning to be better. How can we be more curious? But also, while we're being curious, we also create the foundation for kids to be curious and teenagers to be curious too.
Yeah, and Christina, I'm so glad you asked this question too, because I had not asked this. Like I've been so excited by everything they've been sharing too, that like the fact that you asked that question is I now have more context than I did before this call, which is awesome and amazing, because it makes me even more excited now, because the last couple weeks of getting introduced to what the team is thinking, and my space is more or less, how do we solve problems while approaching it with gratitude and curiosity, rather than looking at the world as broken. How do we actually look at the abundance of positive ripple effects that exist all around us, and how do we lead with a thank you, and how does that gratitude and curiosity expand our awareness of this wonderful world, and also help us as we get more connected. We're addressing many of the symptoms that we currently call problems, and looking at it through the lens of elements. And I'm so curious to learn more about chakras, and how, because our last conversation, the element of looking at all this stuff through the elements, and how there are even just different ways of having like a more fiery conversation, that like more fiery play space versus a more water-based play space, and how people might lean into different type of experiences, I think offer a really cool lens to how an event can help people lean into what they're naturally inclined to, and then also explore other parts that is not their natural inclination, and learn about it through the lens of people who are lit up by looking at the world through that lens. So the play space, the area that I've been most excited around was actually around meal times, and around how people connect through food. And so rather than, all right, it's lunchtime, take your food, we're taking a break, how that actually can be a gratitude-based conversation where people are connecting with one another, connecting with the food that they're literally getting to enjoy, and actually hearing from the people who put in the love to make that all that happen. And it's it's the entry point for a lot, because food is the ultimate connector, in my opinion. Literally food for thought, and we can get into the gut and the mind and all things, but it's really a wonderful time to connect. So curious how we bring that in like a really fun way for kids as well, because like Indy said, as we become older, we can rationalize so many things and make everything so serious. And so for kids, how do we make this learning experience, this consciousness experience, one that's just literally a play space? It's fun, because in the process, for us as adults, how is this like just pure fun for us? And how do we make this experience one that is adding even more light into our life just by doing this? So I'm excited, to say the least.
Does that give some clarity, Christina? And by the way, like, it's gonna, like, more things are gonna start to like open up and clear. It's like there's several people that are missing from this conversation that have been showing up, that give a perspective of cryptocurrency and how we're thinking about how we can gift some of these children and teenagers when they come and they show up and they start to activate their own astrology. How does their astrology and their activation of their astrology, how can that be an NFT itself? Like, how can they develop their own NFT about themselves growing as human beings? And that the NFT is their growth, right? And so we're looking at how to integrate technology in such a way that it's still practical and meaningful. So,
and one idea that we're trying to build out for that is having the kids use their natal chart in their astrology as a way to kind of unlock their power card, and the power card is really them. And we've been talking about this, the whole idea of the inner hero with Jan, and how the idea of learning about your astrology is about kind of externalizing that as an avatar that you really care about, that you want to develop. So instead of like Pokemon and all these games that creates characters in a world where you're not the main character, we're just trying to really kind of put a mirror back into the hero's journey of the kids, right? And so if they can internalize that story much earlier on, while they are developing like physical or like real world skills on top of their like hero's journey, it will allow them to kind of get a strong connection of going into the real world and saying, hey, I think this will do well for me because I may have communication problems, but like learning how to communicate through these classes could really improve my life, you know, and that eventually leads them outside to be able to be curious enough to kind of, you know, figure out what is it that they can learn outside in the real world. So the idea is kind of like how we do passports, but like every time you go to a play shop that has one of the elements in your chart, you kind of look at where the planets show up and if they fit into the element. So if you're strong, let's say like you have a lot of earth in your chart, going to a lot of earth play shops will reinforce this idea, oh, you know, I am very organized and people really care about that skill of mine, rather than say, you know, oh, I'm so anal retentive and I'm so OCD, oh my God, like, you know, which some people, you know, like people kind of say that to people who are super ultra logical and like to organize things. But that's when you can say, hey, maybe like, you know, you don't have to organize everything in your life, like your clothes and all that. I mean, okay, that probably you probably want to, but there are things where like sometimes you kind of go, hey, let's be less grounded and more creative, right? Like even in when we do make games or such, like in the beginning when we start in that very brain heart-storming, you know, anything goes, and then after that we start to pare down, and that's when we need a grounded person now, versus in the first couple of hours when we're coming up with game ideas, we wanted more the creative person. So all of us have those, but maybe being able to see other people kind of express that allows them to kind of shift their energy to be to have something more appropriate when needed. Go ahead. Yeah, Adam.
And this might be really helpful as like a feedback for me as well, because maybe I'll just share how I describe this to other people right now, because this might be a good sanity check in general. And Christina, maybe this will help too. Because the way that I basically describe it right now is bringing kids together for an experience where they're going to learn more about themselves and learn more how to come alive with what already lights them up, like discover more about themselves and learn how to move through the world more wholeheartedly themselves. And the elements are the way that, kind of like Harry Potter, like sorting hats, you kind of enter the experience and have a chance to like see what do you most resonate with, and then throughout the day basically have different sessions that it's like a choose your own adventure. And so each session is aligned with different elements, and so some are more fire elements, some are more fire workshops, some are more water workshops, and you basically enter the experience with almost like a scorecard, like almost like a bingo card type thing, where throughout the day we've intentionally designed these activities so that by the end you have this mosaic that's been self-directed, that's allowed you to kind of tap into different superpowers that you felt called to dive deeper into. And they're intentionally called like play spaces rather than like workshop sessions, because even though you're going to be learning stuff at the end of it, the intentional design of those activities are such that it feels like play. And by the end of this, that mosaic, like literally that bingo card, by the end of this, how can that actually be something that is almost like your badge of you, that could be like an NFT? And so afterward, after the experience where you've now tapped into your superpower, here's what lights me up, we have a series of different, call it volunteer internship type ways to engage afterward, where you can perhaps be even paid in cryptocurrency. And because the accessibility of wallets and such would be so variable, how could someone who might not typically have access to that, how could they use that bingo card, that mosaic, as like their wallet, perhaps as their key to access the way that they'd be getting paid as they dive deeper into these different volunteer internship opportunities that are aligned with their with the superpowers that they've been drawn toward through this experience. So that's like the long-winded way of like how I explain it to people. So it'd be really helpful feedback to know if there's like core elements that I'm missing. Because my superpower, I would say, is like I am a translator, and at least what I feel like my superpower is I sit on the like I can get really, really really fluffy as I describe it, versus like really 3D. And so I'm like constantly trying to describe all the fairly heady stuff to people that don't think that way. So that's my like attempt to do it there. It's like, that's how I describe it. And so hopefully that helps. And hopefully I described it.
Adam, the only thing you're missing there is that there's going to be a lot of talk about poop. So.
Food?
Poop.
Oh, poop. Did you say poop or food?
Yes, poop.
Well, poop is food. Poop is food as well. It depends whose point of view you're looking at it from. If you're in an earth play shop.
That's how you earthbend. You earthbend poop and give it back to the earth.
I mean, I would love it if we had a composting toilet at the event. I think we should definitely have some composting toilets at the event.
Well,
Simply,
I'll say, Adam, I really appreciated the way that you explained it. I thought it was beautiful. I love it through the 4 elements. I love that you're thinking of astrology, and really where, put astrology aside. What I more see when you say astrology is that you're approaching it from each individual's unique design, and for allowing them each to have their own experience and to wipe away more of like the conditioning from the external world, and for them to have information to project their own individual truth from, to try it out and see what works best for them. I guess what I was also missing from the explanation, or which would be helpful for me to hear, and maybe it's even on the flyer that I just haven't dove deeper into, is around like the specific ages of the children in this first experience. Also too, I think it's 1 day, but is it 2 days? And is there a way to extend to multiple days, so it's more even immersive beyond just a 1 day experience? And I think that even goes into my question around vision, like what's the full on vision beyond this one experience too. And then lastly, from like, I understand that this is to give children who essentially wouldn't necessarily have access to this type of work. So I've made that connection to Dr. Gordon of She Ready. But like where are the children? I don't know, Jen, I'm blanking on Jen's last name in this moment, but Yogi Jen. I know she's involved as well, but like, where are the children coming from? And then leading to the next question, like, where is the most support needed? Because I with Indy, behind this, I do understand the programming is going to be solid. And of course, yes, there'll be development needed for the programming, but like, I always tend to go to like, how do we get the people there and who's it for? And so more of like the sales tactics of, as Adam, you started describing, like, here's the vision, like, how do we get the quote unquote sales pitch, the presentation of that to light everybody up.
All good questions. Oh my gosh. I'll throw a couple answers quickly out there. Number one, I got Tuesday reserved, Adam. So Tuesday is good, the 14th. For us to do multiple days will cost more. It's costing us, we're getting a discount from Wisdom, but it's costing us $5,000 for the entire day to use the big dome. That's just the big dome. They have other stuff going on in the other domes. So we could do something in those ones, but we'll just be having the main dome for that 5,000 for the whole day. So that gives you like an idea of budget, right? For how much it's costing us. What we would love to do, as you're speaking this, and as Adam, as you're explaining this, and I'm curious to like throw this out there for the whole community, for all of us to contemplate, like, yes, we want to get foster kids. Yes, we want to get some teens, and there's some access points we have to bring some, like Jen is one of them. There's a couple other people that work with foster kids that are interested in bringing some of those foster communities in. But this is something we could think about, is also selling some tickets to potential other kids, like from the spiritual communities, their kids, if they want to come. I mean, this is something we could talk about. I'm totally open for it. We have enough time to sell tickets, and it could be like a 1-for-1 thing, something like that. Just throwing that out there. Did I miss any other questions she asked? What was another one?
Age?
Which one?
What's the age? What
Oh,
age is
age.
this for?
Age, I think what we're doing, it's interchangeable for anything between 5 and 18. Like, it can work between all those ages. We were aiming to have something like the younger, like under 13, under 12, 13 would be like will be up until lunchtime. And then lunchtime afterwards would be more like towards teenagers. That's what we were thinking at first, but it also depends on how many kids we have, right?
Okay.
So we were actually contemplating about separating the teenagers from the adolescents. Would you say? What would you say? How would you?
Young kids, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're definitely would be good to separate that 13 to 18, and I think there is even some division within the 13 and 18. And I speak a little bit to that because I have just discovered my journals, diaries from age 9 to 18, and like, whoa.
Wow.
And if you think of the 13-year-old female experience, as well as the 13-year-old male experience, because that's touched upon in there. But a lot of what is completely being neglected in the educational curriculum is around relating. And I think that's really important. And I do, even for me, as I had a younger best friend who was 2 years younger than me at age 13. And I remember I wrote about how she was so different in her, she would not understand. So at 13 years old, an 11-year-old is like they are in completely different dimensions at that time. And so just to keep that in mind of when you're putting them into a room, a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old are worlds apart, and a 13-year-old and 15-year-old are worlds apart. It's like almost if you take like a 30 and a 40-year-old in the same room is the same as taking like a 13-year-old and 15-year-old.
I think it's more extreme, actually. Yeah, I mean,
yes, I actually think it might be more extreme.
Yeah, like, I mean, my experience is even like between the 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds at the school where I teach, there's a different, like between the 7th graders and the 8th graders, that just those ages, especially I think once you get like past like 11, there's this kind of exponential thing that happens from 11 to 18, and each year is like this huge jump. Yeah.
It's crazy. I coach 7th and 8th graders right now, and last year was 5th and 6th graders, and even just the 6th graders that turn to 7th graders are like different humans.
Yeah.
And a phrase that, and maybe this could be well, it's a principle that's playing out in all of my life right now. That came during a Psych K session, if anyone's familiar with that. But basically, like, it's all about connecting. Like with everything, it's all about connecting. And so, like you're describing, Christina, it's with relating, it's like finding your people. Because for the kids that are coming to this, they have to, there's a lot of intergenerational, interage like exchange that can happen from a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. Yes. But are they leaving this, like being intentional about how they can leave this feeling more connected to their people rather than I was just a teacher for this whole time?
Yes. Yeah, there's even too of a part in my journal that I wrote about around, being just 1 year older and looking up to those people 1 year older, but being fearful of connecting. Like, oh, I see this person. I thought she was an enemy, but now I want to be friends with her. And now I'm dreaming about being friends with her. But when I see her walk down the hallway, I can't make eye contact. Like I shy away. So how do we create an experience that helps them to not shy away from essentially the people that they're innately attracted to? It's like it's attraction that's pulling us closer together, but sometimes the fear of that attraction puts us away from each other. So in a connective experience, how do we even activate like your innate attraction for one another?
Yeah, because then when you leave this, you're actually like, you can actually leave this experience with friends, more friends after this. And the superpower that you've developed here doesn't matter when you're, you know, where you go after this, like you can, it's transferable to like even like romantic partnerships. Like, oh, if I'm interested in this person, I don't have to like, I can, how do I extend the olive branch of connection?
Yeah. And just by the way, I love leaving this experience and making more friends. We're all engrossed in the technology age, but we also know what's challenges that leads to. And so even to potentially give them stationery and addresses. This is how, if you'd like to send a letter to this person, you can
Wait, did
ask.
Christina go mute?
Oh, I didn't mean to go mute. Am I mute?
No, I hear her.
Yep, she's talking about giving kids stationery and addresses and getting the
Yeah.
juice, it literally planting. Yeah.
To help them stay connected, like pen pals. There's so much in the art of writing that we can express ourselves.
What if that's a thing that they could do during the session, is like to write a thank you note in the set? Like that's part of the gratitude-based learning that's in my space that we're working on, is and what looking to bring here for mealtime. And so how do we like gratitude-based meals is to like literally thank someone. So like even after, when we do virtual high school programs, at the end of the session, it's like, if you were to say thank you to the other people here, like what would you say thank you for? And so like I'd love like for a kid to be able to literally share that thank you with someone in the session and give them an excuse to do that.
And I have a something to throw in there too, like with younger kids, what I've noticed, my personal experience working with kids and teenagers, with younger kids nowadays, it's like it feels more about like just playing with them has a big impact, like playing, right? Playing with them. I feel like teenagers kind of like there's like they're seeking out adults that they want to be like. It's like a little bit different vibe, right? Because they're looking around. I mean, especially the teenagers I work with these days, they don't believe in adults anymore. Like they're kind of done with us. They think that we lost, we failed, you know, and they look at their parents and they're like, these are failures, right? Most of them are looking at their parents like failures. So, and it's like, this is based on me having conversations with them, right? Like about why they are talking about suicide, why are you guys thinking this way, right? Why are they so pessimistic? So teenagers are super pessimistic. The younger ones, they're more playful, right? And they're ready to play. So in a way too, I mean, personally, I like going after the challenge personally. And I would love to make this more focused on teenagers and everything from 12 and above. Personally, that's like would be wonderful because it's activating them to volunteer in the summer and they have a little bit more sovereignty to choose how to volunteer throughout the summer. Like that's what I feel with teenagers, a little bit more nuance. But what do you guys think about that? Like, should we just focus on teenagers for now? And then, you know?
I think so. I think this toolbox that we're offering is very powerful for teenagers and they're ready to receive it in its full glory and apply it. And of course, it's really important to share it with all ages, but there's some innate remembering that continues for children up until about, yeah, I'd say it depends on the child, but you know, sometimes up until 11. You know, depending on what situation they're in, of course. Yeah. So
Can you remind me what the dates of this is?
June 13th.
June 14th was just.
June 14th.
Are we doing 14 too? Both days?
I mean, both days is 5,000 times 2.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's I'm okay with that.
But June 13th is what we originally said, right? Monday. Okay. Just making sure.
And do you have all the, so if we do, I love, by the way, the idea of focusing on the 12 to 18. Do you have the program all fleshed out?
Charlie, do you think you could send her the slideshow, and maybe Adam too? Can you share that with them?
Which slideshow? We have
The
a few.
the Google slide. Oh yeah, no, what slideshow? Shit.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Christina, we don't have the exact play shops lined up and flushed out. It's more about right now we're like trying to cultivate the crew to facilitate it, the right crew, because we just right now that we figured out the budget for how much it's going to cost to rent it, we were also trying to figure out, that's one of the things on my itinerary with this conversation, is how much do we pay everybody who's involved with this, who's showing up for the whole day? How much do we support somebody who wants to just show up for their play shop? I imagine like those of us who show up for the whole day and for this whole time coming up, we should all be taken care of, you know? So what does that look like?
Well, where's the money? If this is her foster cares, where's the money coming from?
Some rich guy?
Do we have the rich guy?
That's me, dude. I'm gonna pay for it. No, that's definitely what we're looking at right now is like there's two avenues. We're looking at like sponsorships and producers and finding some sponsors and producers, or the other option is crowdfunding. And then also charging for tickets, I guess now is something to think about too.
Yeah, I mean, I am a fan. Maybe this is just my own, because of Feminine Weapon, every year I've done this event and, you know, I've done 75,000 and rarely spend money to raise that fund for the kids, and have essentially volunteered my own time to do it. Sure, I guess having a sponsor and paying everyone would be probably the most effective and I guess in way of moving it, progressing it forward. And at the same time, I would hate to hold an experience back by lack of resources and money. And I think that some of the people that would want to be involved are not necessarily driven by that. So I think that you can, and a first time experience, you can, yeah, you can play with a little bit, but if you can go out and get if the venue's 5,000 and you can get 8 to 10 to 12,000 for it, yes, rock on. And maybe this is my feminine that's like needs the masculine to come and be like, here's the structure of it, because I'm like, give to the kids, give everything, whatever it may be.
I mean, if we had more time, we're very limited, just because when we started this whole project, it was just about 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago. So we've got a very short deadline to kind of put this together. But yeah, if we had, I think, a year to plan, and this is the idea is, we're testing things out, but the goal is to make this more of a permanent, recurring thing that people get involved with and, grows from there. So yeah, we really definitely kind of testing things out, because I don't know that we've all doing this because no one is doing this, and so we're kind of like, the idea of like putting our money where our mouth is, but we just don't have the money, so we're just hoping that pulls together.
Yeah, cool.
We're putting our own money, but where our mouth is.
Well,
So
Christina, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please, Adam. Please go ahead, Adam.
Well, like you described it, you said this at one point, like what are we asking people to show up to? Kind of what is the pitch? What I'm finding is like we're creating that pitch right now. So it's not, and this is just my feeling, it's not, is there money for something like this? It's what are we asking for money for specifically? And the other thing is, I'm 2 thumbs up on the teenagers, and because also what I'm finding is that, so we have like a 6-week high school, we gave it a very fancy title, a social impact entrepreneur fellowship, where we basically, it's an excuse to help kids reframe the way we're connected. And so it's like a Trojan horse for spirituality almost, and how we're all connected and create ripple effects with everything we do. And afterward though, we're at the very early stage and we're asking the high school students, what do you want to do with this? And some of the students are wanting to go to elementary schools and share this with elementary schools. And so what just happened actually was one of the students, I was like, all right, I threw out some ideas and they ended up coming up with like a totally new activity, totally new way to engage students in this, kind of like a gratitude-based show and tell activity. And so they and a couple of students brought it to an elementary school. And so a vision that is emerging for me as we're talking out loud about all this is, how do we create this superpower experience for teens? And after the fact, how can we support them in perhaps, for future activities? We have the main session, but then it has breakout groups of middle schoolers perhaps that are led by the teenagers. And so I don't know, that's a vision that's come while we're talking out loud here. But yeah, how do we empower high school students to then share this with their friends, their family, right? The people that aren't even at something like this, their little siblings, their little cousins.
Yeah, and at that point, it'll be like a real testament to what we're doing. Is it making kids passionate enough to then want to share what they're learning to others, right? Because then that means they found something that inherently helps them, so they recognize that it's about them sharing that.
So have you guys seen the video of the kid? He's maybe 9 years old, and his little brother, who's maybe 4 or 5, is having like he's about to really break out in tears and have a fit, and his brother's like calming him down with breathing. He's like, exhale, and he's like teaching him how to breathe. And it's I guess that's like you just describing that, Charlie, perhaps that's an experiment for this altogether. And I don't know how we gauge that, measure that, whatever, but at the end of this, would you be excited to share something that you learned with a little brother, a little sibling, a little cousin, share this with someone else? Because yeah,
their surveys at the end could be a way for them to earn some more cryptocurrency, actually, so we can incentivize and make it more playful and gamify their surveys. But another thing really quickly that's on my list here too, and I want to address this because I want to acknowledge you, Mick and Adam and Charlie and all of us. Christina, you're also jumping on this. One of the things that was popping up, the number was popping up for me that all of us should get for participating and being involved and fully being immersed in this is $500 for all of us for showing up for that day. Do you guys feel good about everybody who shows up fully? 500. Does that feel good? Any questions? Any thoughts?
Well, I'd say it's a little bit more than just showing up, but I think of it's showing up. Like, yes, if you show up. Sure.
Sure. Yeah, because like as Adam was saying, it's all about asking, like, what are we asking for? So this is something we're asking. We want to honor the facilitators well, people who show up.
Yeah, we want to feel like the people who show up will want to keep coming back. And, if, usually commonly pays a big thing that we all, because we probably all would do this voluntarily, and we are. So that's why like sometimes like the money isn't a thing, but I think we want to make sure that, hey, actually I stopped working in my regular job and I'm doing this full time. That's where we want to get to, so that your passions are rewarded, so that we're not burning out because we're finding our spare time to do this. But it's actually, this really calling out the kids too. If they're passionate about something, we should be supporting that rather than something that we're not passionate about. So we're clearly all passionate, and that's why we're showing up. So we want to make sure we are being supported also financially.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a helpful nudge in my life too, because candidly, until you said that, I like fully planning, like this is just, did not know that was a piece of it. So I was like planning on fully like, this is life. This is like, so, but what's wonderful about this is, like you just said, Charlie, how does this stuff not just become a thing that you do on the side that you vault? Like how does this become life? And how do we, because what excites me also around like what kids can be doing after this is how do we help kids realize like, no, this is living your superpower, like is not just something you need to do on the side. Like that can, the things that light you up, need everyone doing things that light them up. And so anyway, it's a helpful nudge because, yeah, I would be much more in the volunteer mode. And it's just a very helpful nudge into how do we actually create the sustainable space.
And one thing too, I want to mention regarding like an experiment we can do to test out the age difference, because I understand the age difference, but I do think some of it is from the programming of like education is step process and you kids do this, you kids do that, you can't connect. But with astrology, it was actually meant to be your psychology. So that when you have a lot of like fire signs together who may have age difference, their psychology is very similar. They really want to express themselves. They really want to share something. So sometimes it's psychology of like a younger one version of you going, like you see them like fire signs love to see each other like push the boundary and say, hey, I think that we should do it this way, you know, because the earth sign on the side, oh yeah, I was thinking that too, but I don't want to say anything, right? And then having the earth signs maybe go, oh, you think that way too? I think that way too. And they could be worlds apart, but it's their psychology that allows them to kind of a way to connect and say, hey, I am an introvert and it's okay for me to not necessarily like be the one who's the loudest in the room, right? Because then there's a place where maybe we let those kids who are all introverts, it's all about writing. And so in that classroom, like no one talks, everyone writes maybe. And so it shows off that like the ones who write have so much to offer, but they just maybe can't speak it, you know? And so hopefully it'll show us how vulnerable we can be, but how we can like offset that, you know? Because I think too often we're like, well, if you're not talking and if you're not raising your hand, you know, you're just not healthy, you know, like whatever, like the system make us want to kind of follow their role model. We want to be able to allow the ones who maybe might be more emotional and sensitive that like they don't feel bad for being sensitive, you know, because that's part of their gift. But you know, we don't talk about like, hey, you know, can you sense that emotion? Like we should talk about that, you know, but like, oh, like people say, oh, you're so sensitive, like grow thick skin, you know, and so we're not able to really allow children to express these. And maybe that allows them to kind of go beyond their these like age range or you know, whatever is going on in school. Because
I don't even think we should worry about the age thing, because like Waldorf schools and many other schools that are like famous for like not doing the traditional institutionalized education thrive by not having grades. And like people like children and teenagers, they actually moderate each other more than anything else. They do it virtually, you know. We don't even know right now because we're not plugged in, but they're doing it so like on Discord. Like you should see how they regulate each other already. It's pretty amazing. We're human. We do that. You know, left to our devices, we watch out for each other, you know?
yeah.
Or if we're toxic, we tear each other down. So it depends on which way you go. Mick, you were gonna say something?
No, I was going to agree with Adam that I've just been approaching this all through volunteer mode as well. So it's just, it is important. And it's interesting that the dome is $5,000 and each one of us being like a 500. And I mean, you know, 5 is the anthropos, you know, the number of our symmetry. So it's a good reaffirmation in that way. So being fully human and integrating all 5 elements as well. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, synchronicities.
Yeah, and to be honest, I am planning on reaching out. Like now that we have some numbers to throw out, I am planning on reaching out to Farmers Footprint Kiss the Ground to see if they'll donate some money to us, because we're gonna be promoting them, right? So they can sponsor this. If you guys know any other organizations to think about, you know, to contemplate.
Well, I mean, I'm going to look into the city grants again, see what's out there right now. I mean, it's a slow process, but yeah, if not for this one, for a future one, they basically just have to spend money. So yeah.
And we have to also make sure like we do plan to record this event and to make it part of like a launch thing so that, you know, we can then go out and say, this is kind of what we did. This is what came out of it. we'd love to do this in a bigger scale and really kind of push that.
Do we know, and this, well, I'll just ask it, in terms of like Farmer's Footprint, for example, it's more or less asking, like, a sponsor is one thing, but they're like, it's basically advertising. What type of collateral, like what assets do we have to offer from a, like, yeah, what, and maybe that's not a right now thing, but as we look at the Wise Dome, like, what are the, like, does someone, when you walk in, like, is there a presented by right, like stuff like that, and the number of eyeballs that would be on that, and who would, anyway, just,
I mean, two easy things that are popping up right away. One is that we can plug the kids to go volunteer with them afterwards, right? Like a post event, right? That's one. And then with that longer term connection, there could be some sort of cryptocurrency connected to it that they can facilitate, you know, between them. But that's like the obvious thing that's popping up to me is like giving superheroes now like missions to go out and do, right? And like we talked about this, the gamifying the quest. So we're creating the bridge to turn their projects into quests.
And we might find like an ambassador of like plant for kids, right? Like it could be like the next, like, you know, Taurus Gemini rising, like Indy here, who wants to share all the beautiful things they grow. And that could be like a kid, and that could be like, that's like the epitome of what we're doing, because then these kids are like reconstructing what their society will feel like in the future, right? And so we're giving them the tools, and we're kind of giving them, you know, our wisdom, and go, that might work, that might take a long time for you to do, but maybe if you do it this way, you're like, what if we have ambassadors for Earth? Like, that would be great, and they're already kids, you know? I mean, that is the power of where we can kind of take this, is you have now kids sponsoring Kiss the Ground because they believe that these people are helping the soil and learning about soil.
And another thing, Adam, to throw on there too, just from a media perspective, is we can, like, I'm hoping that we can record stuff. So we can record like small interviews. We can have like a little photo booth or video booth where the kids can talk about what was your favorite quest that you want to go and get involved with. So now that's all content that could go to any of these organizations, you know?
that's awesome.
So where we're coming is we are trying to create a curated experience for children to be able to find places in the real world to go. And we are going to be watching, and we're watching both sides. Obviously the kids who are coming there, but then, you know, the places that we're looking at, are they doing things that are supporting society that isn't just like, you know, Monsanto and like trying to like break away agriculture? Like, is it really supporting it in a very sustainable way, so we don't get into this situation in the future where like all these places suck and we're not doing anything about it, right? And so it's showing that social, you know, justice, but like right in the beginning of like, as an entrepreneur, how do you like get involved every day? Because protesting might be great, but like, are people showing up, you know? So, but if you're going to like these farms, and now you have a voice at the farms, you know, saying, hey, actually, you know, please teach us more about, you know, sustainable soil practices, right?
So, okay, so it looks like Adam, Christina, you guys are both gonna go. It's good, it's cool. Is there anything else before you guys bounce?
I'll say for me, I'm curious to look at my schedule to see if I can actually be there for the experience, because I'm on the East Coast right now. But if I can make my way there, I'm definitely interested in designing and guiding a facilitated experience around love and relationship, and tapping into my own essence as I was 13, 15, and sharing from that lens to give them like, here's a way to relate, and actually even starting that from reading from my journal from their age. So to kind of say like, hey, I was once you, and here's where I, you know, what I crave to know at your age, and leading from that place. But I do need to tap into those dates, and that $500 too would then allow me to at least cover my airfare. And congratulations. I think it's awesome. This is great that you're leading this, forging this forward, all of you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is just awesome. And yeah, I gotta jump here. But yeah, for me, it's really just timing wise. Like but even if I can't be there in person, and I can just be there to support with like even just heartstorming with designing, like even if that's the way that I can contribute, like I'm here for manifesting this. I am flying back from Philadelphia on the 13th, or from New York on the 13th. And so I land in San Diego at like 1 o'clock on the 13th. And so that's the constraint on my end. So I'm able to be there on the 14th, but not the 13th. But either way, I'm in for this. So that's where I'm at. And also, I will, there's, even if I can or can't go in person, I do want to tell one of the high school students that is now in college, of ours, I want to let him know about this, because he just led a Indigenous food connection event up in at his college as a freshman. And so this would be a way for him to, just to further deepen into this. And either way would be like just a really cool learning development opportunity for him to be a part of. So yeah.
Awesome.
All right, guys, this was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you,
Christina.
everyone.
Be healthy, be well.
Bye, guys. Thank you. To be continued. I'll
Bye.
talk to you soon, Indy.
Talk to you soon, Christina. Oh, then now it's just the AI and us.
Oh, the AI taking notes, note taker.
Yes.
Note
So I don't have
taking.
to take notes.
Yeah, yeah.
At least somebody's transcribing all this. Thank goodness.
Yeah, right. You should throw some words out really hard to test out the AI.
Right. So let's start speaking in
Yeah,
Punjabi
native
and Spanish. And
Yeah.
Light language.
Right.
Oh man.
We better be careful. I think AI understands light language because they speak in light.
That's right.
Maybe.
But yeah, man, looks and sounds good. I'm glad I get to see you guys both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling like things are moving along? Are we good in timing?
I think timing is good. I think it's finally, I'm so glad I got the feedback from Regina from Wisdom. At least we have a number.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
That's-
always helps because otherwise it's like, what are we doing? Where are we going?
Right. Okay. Cool.
That's very helpful. But yeah, that super grounded information. Yeah.
Super grounding information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, plus, I mean that they were also booking that time for us too, so that we can all move towards that date. Okay.
Right. And even like the 500, I like what Christina said. Like if we bank for I was taking notes the other day and I was like just budgeting 10,000 at least. Right. And then that way that covers all of us as well as any extra costs, right, that we might have.
Okay. Sounds good.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to be aiming for trying to raise 10,000. I've already started reaching out. I had some meetings this week with some people from like production companies, like Hollywood production companies, and seeing if they can give us some money,
Mm-mm.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay.
Are you back in LA?
I'm back in LA.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You can stop the recording while we
Yeah, we
finish.
can stop. We can stop.